Welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. Ooh, do I have an amazing episode for you all today. We are diving into the groundbreaking new docuseries, The Sing Sing Chronicles, that premiered on MSNBC this past weekend. It's directed by award-winning filmmaker Dawn Porter, and this four-part series exposes the devastating toll of wrongful convictions through the lens of Jon-Adrian, best known as JJ Velazquez, a man who spent nearly 24 years behind bars for a murder he didn't commit. And so today, I'm joined by JJ himself, I know, so exciting, and also Dan Slepian, who is the veteran Dateline NBC journalist whose 2-decade investigation helped exonerate JJ and 5 other men. And Dan is also just so incredible. He's received more than a dozen Emmy nominations. He was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and he's gotten 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards. And I just loved talking to them both. I mean, Dan is just a champion for justice reform and a powerful advocate for the wrongfully convicted. And the way that Dan and JJ speak to one another and about one another is just so moving. So we are going to discuss the Sing Sing Chronicles and the broken system and just everything that has gone down in the last 24 years when it comes to JJ Velazquez and his case. And in the Sing Sing Chronicles, they also talk about the famous New York City Palladium nightclub shooting and the man that was wrongfully convicted for that. It's really interesting because apparently he had a cell right next to JJ, and that's how JJ met Dan. But we'll get into it in the interview. So I'm going to stop talking. And this interview was pre-recorded on Friday. So you'll hear us talk about the Sing Sing Chronicles like it hasn't premiered yet, but it has at this point. It premiered the 23rd and the 24th of November. So you can go ahead and watch it now on MSNBC after listening to this interview. So yes, now I will stop talking and play my interview with JJ and Dan, and then I'll close us out.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi,
Hi,
JJ.
Lauren. How are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great.
Awesome. I will use your names and I will speak directly to each of you just to make sure that this interview is not confusing, but I am so honored to speak with both of you. Dan, I want to start with you. You've spent over 20 years investigating wrongful convictions, including JJ's case. It's just incredible. What drew you to JJ, and why was his story so compelling to pursue?
Thanks for that, Lauren. What initially drew me to JJ, to be honest with you, was someone else, was his son Jacob. And that was before I ever spoke to JJ or ever knew what he even looked like. I was working on another story on Thanksgiving Day, 2002. In the book, I wrote a book called The Sing Sing Files. And in the book, and The Sing Sing Chronicles this weekend is airing. The first story is about a guy named David Lemus who was innocent and shared a wall with JJ in prison. And David told JJ that I was coming, and JJ had his mother wait for me in the lobby. And she was holding the hands of her grandsons, JJ's sons, and this little 5-year-old boy, Jacob, looked up at me with these beautiful eyes and looked so confused. Why am I in this prison? And I made a vow to myself at that moment that I would look into JJ's case. And when I did, the fuel became twofold. First, JJ, and the magnificent, emotionally intelligent, unbelievable human that he is. But the second part, and for my journalistic endeavor, more importantly, is that every piece of evidence proved his innocence, that he was railroaded, he was clearly innocent. And once I saw that happening, there's nothing that I could have done but not walk away.
Oh my God. So I'm crying. I'm the worst. I can't even, I just think about JJ, your sweet son, just being so confused and This is, Dan, that is so admirable. And I know that I believe JJ, your cellmate, or on the other side, he was convicted of the Palladium shootings that he was innocent of.
Yes,
Is that right? Yeah.
yes. His
Okay.
name is David Lemus.
Yes. Okay. And so he'll be a part of this weekend, the Sing Sing Chronicles, which I'm so excited to see. But JJ, I have to ask you this. This always just kind of sticks with me, I guess. You're wrongfully convicted. You are in prison and you're in Sing Sing nonetheless. I mean, one of the worst prisons ever, and you're in there for 25 years. How do you stay on track and not become a criminal? I mean, how do you stay true to yourself, and how do you keep this hope alive? And when you're surrounded by these guys that are just hardened, and I'm assuming they're always testing you, and I just can't imagine that's easy.
No, you're absolutely right, and thank you for the question, Lauren. To be totally frank, I would say that what really kept me, um, you know, tethered to my humanity was, like the resilience of my mother. Seeing how my mother was showing up every weekend to make sure that there's a relationship between my children and I, and
Oh,
just seeing how strong she was through it all. I mean, my mother walked from Harlem to Albany within 6 days to
wow.
make a statement about, you know, how important wrongful convictions are and how destructive they are to the families,
Hmm.
and so, like, there's no way that I wasn't going to make it through. I didn't know if I was going to be released, but there was no way that I wasn't going to make it through. As long as there was breath in my body, I knew I had to fight,
Yeah.
particularly because I had to get back to my two children. I had to get back to my mother who fought so hard for me. And so
Mm,
for me to give up on them while they're going through what they're going through for me, it just, it wouldn't sit right with me, right? And
yeah.
so, between having her, my children, and then Dan comes and brings this great force and creates this platform where the world gets to see this case on ice, basically,
Mm,
where we have the prosecution's office who's not really trying to face the facts.
yeah.
And, the fight lasted 27 years, but it's finally over, and I'm happy to be exonerated. But I think what's most important is for people this weekend to tune in and to really just understand, you know, that the journey is much more important than the issue. And the
Mm,
journey will demonstrate all the different nuances that are connected to this issue of wrongful conviction, because it's not just the individuals who are convicted and wrongfully convicted at that. It is everybody in their community that is attached to them and tethered to their family that
yeah.
feels this destructive weight of wrongful convictions.
Yeah. I really can't imagine. And I mean, I'm sitting here crying because Dan, I also feel like, you're an angel. I mean, you changed so many lives. You have changed so many lives, and not just JJ and his family, but many others. And I want to ask you that in JJ's case, you mentioned, or you alluded to the fact that the evidence here was pretty much overwhelming in the fact that JJ did not do it. So just getting into sort of the details of his case, what jumped out at you immediately besides a bullshit witness confession or testimony?
I'm going to answer. I'm going to answer that question in a second, not to be
Yeah.
a politician and not answer your question directly at first. but but Lauren, you started by saying, and I'm an angel, and that's very kind of you to say. But it makes me, I say this all the time, it makes me very uncomfortable, because the reality is
Mm.
that JJ is the angel.
Oh.
Jay and all of these other guys that I
Oh.
worked on their stories because of him. JJ has given me so much more than I've given him. And
Love it.
the fact is that, you know, I I believe that anybody in my position who saw what I saw, who experienced what I experienced, and who met JJ, anybody in journalism, anybody with a platform, any human being would have come to the same conclusion. So I appreciate the kind words, but JJ is my hero.
Oh my gosh.
He made me a better person. He made me a better journalist. He made me, most of all, a better friend and a better human. So I just want to address that at the outset. In terms of his case, when I got into the details of his case, I can't go through it all now because it's really kind of complicated, the whole thing. But here's the simple version. This is the simple version that got my attention, and the case should have ended right there. He should never have been arrested in the first place. There were 9 eyewitnesses in this illegal gambling parlor that was owned and run by a former New York City police officer. Who worked that illegal gambling parlor operated within the confines of the precinct in which he used to work. All of the eyewitnesses initially gave a description of the shooter as a light-skinned black man with braids. Every single person said the shooter was a light-skinned black man, and all of the eyewitnesses were black. And that's a very, very important point when it comes to the science of eyewitness identification, because there's something called cross-racial identification. White people are more inclined to accurately identify white people than black people and of other different races. So black people, if you're black, you're more likely to be able to identify a black person. JJ is not black.
Right.
JJ is Latino, and he's never had braids. And in fact, the mugshot that the heroin addict who had 10 bags of heroin in his underwear when he came to the precinct and was allowed to leave uncharged when they threatened to arrest him with the murder unless he picked somebody out. He looked at 1,800 mugshots and picked JJ, whose mugshot should have been sealed because it was from some random thing that wasn't even real. It should have been sealed. He picked that out. When he picked out that mugshot, JJ was listed as white Hispanic. As soon as he was picked out and the detective arrested him, the detective changed his race to black Hispanic to fit his theory of the crime. That's just the beginning.
Wow.
You know, JJ had a co-defendant that he never even met before.
What?
So there was a co-defendant that pled guilty and did 10 years and got out, and JJ has no idea who he is. There's no connection between the two men. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh my
So
gosh.
when I say railroaded, I mean he was railroaded.
Oh my gosh. And JJ, I mean, like I said, I'm just so in awe of your strength. And I think about this all the time when we feel like we're wronged as humans. It's tough not to get resentful and not be angry. And it really, again, it really just sounds like you have just been such a peaceful person throughout this whole ordeal. When you were arrested initially and you were going through all of this, I mean, what was going through your head?
Wow. It's going to be hard to remember back 27 years, but I'll tell you this. Definitely I was in shock. I was in fear of my own life. You know, to be in New York at that time in the 90s, it was a dangerous time, for individuals to like be the focus of, NYPD.
Yeah.
You think about Abner Louima and all these different things that have taken place. And so you can understand, like, in that context, what kind of fear must have been in my heart and in my mind at the time. So it's really just like this shockful fear. I was young. I had just turned 22 years old. We had a lawyer tell my mother that if we were to get pulled over in the street, that my mother's to throw herself on top of me. I'm supposed to throw myself on the floor, and my mother's supposed to throw herself on top of me. So that's the mindset that we had. I felt like I was like America's Most Wanted until I was able to turn myself into the precinct, which is why I wanted to get in there so badly and volunteer for a lineup. And the truth of the matter was that they didn't have a warrant for my arrest. But while they didn't have a warrant for my arrest, the door to our apartment where my kids rest their head was hanging off of hinges with a police lock on it. And so everything about the police investigation was wrong from the beginning. There was big pressure because it was a member of service that was killed. And then there was also big pressure to kind of like bring that case to a close
Right.
because of the illegal activity of that member of service, right? And so
Mm.
it was like, let's just close this case as quick as possible. And it's ironic that they would go as far as to change the race of the suspect just to bring closure to a case. And
Yeah.
I mean, like when you look at it from that perspective, if I had to put it in one word, I would say frantic.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm, I don't want to say I'm sorry for, I don't know. Like, what do people say even, JJ? Like, I don't, I don't want to be cliche. I don't want to be, but like, I am so freaking sorry. You lost a chunk of your life. You lost a chunk of time with your family. And, and I guess I'm truly freaking so sorry.
Well, Lauren, I appreciate you sharing that. And it means a lot coming from you and from so many
Yeah.
others who have said that. But the truth of the matter is that it's displacement and it's misplaced. You should
Mm.
not have to be sorry. The people who need to be sorry are the people who will not apologize. The judge finished a 27-year fight of injustice in just 4 minutes without
Oh,
apologizing.
what?
The president of the United States apologized to me, but the prosecutor will not apologize to me.
That
You
would
know,
That's what
anger
we,
me.
people need to walk away with.
Yeah, that would
you
anger
know,
me.
Lauren, we have this series coming up this weekend, the Sing Sing Chronicles
Yes.
on Saturday, so tomorrow and Sunday at 9 o'clock on MSNBC.
Yes.
And JJ and I were just at two screenings, and one in the city and one in Westchester, of this to sold out audiences on the big screen. And
Oh.
that, I'll tell you, 2-3 days later, even this morning, I got a message. I was, frankly, I'm not usually surprised, but I was surprised by the depth of the emotional resonance that it had with people. And it was all consistent. Many, many messages that people, even days later, saying
Yeah.
they're overwhelmed and they were shaken. That's the word I've
Oh,
gotten a lot. They were
wow.
shaken by what they experienced. And
Wow.
so if people take the time to
Gosh.
watch it, I think that they'll understand what that means.
No, I am so excited to watch it. And I know that I'm going to be moved just really quickly because I have to let you go. I sat through a screening of Lovely Jackson a month ago. I don't know if you know that story, Ricky Jackson. He was
We
on
know.
death.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yep.
I
We
was
know.
Oh yeah, God, he's amazing. But I was hyperventilating, you guys, sobbing hysterically, hyperventilating. And then after the show, you also know Jason Flom. He gets up there and he's talking, and someone else is talking. They're like, "All right, let's go have drinks now." Like, the party. And I'm like, I can't party. I was so, excuse my language, fucked up from that I was like, are you guys serious right now? Maybe you're used to this. I am not. I need to process this. I am feeling sick to my stomach. It's the weirdest emotional experience, and it's wild. So I can only imagine that the Sing Sing Chronicles is going to bring the same feelings, if not more.
Yeah. With all due respect to our dear, dear friend Jason and to Ricky Jackson, and not to compare anyone's trauma to
Yes.
anyone else or any production to another production, the nature of this story this weekend, this longitudinal 20-year journey all on tape where you see us grow from young men to older men,
Mm.
is to compare. It's like I would say you just were like on the bumper cars and you're about to get into a Porsche.
Oh,
If you watch this, it's a
whoa.
completely different kind of experience over time, because it really, really exposes the depth, the depravity, and the emotional disaster it causes in a way. And I'm not saying this for me. I'm just saying because of the length of time it goes, viewers are able to experience it and see JJ's kids grow up in front of the camera all in real time.
Oh my gosh, I'm already crying. Well, you guys, I could keep talking to you for so long, but I have to jump. I'm being told I have to jump. But thank you so much, JJ. And thank you so much, Dan. You guys are going to be in my
Thank you,
prayers. And
Lauren.
I can't wait to watch this. Congratulations, guys.
we really, really appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you
Thank you.
again. I really had chills from that interview, and I was seriously holding back tears at certain points. I think that after interviewing people this year that were wrongfully convicted, and I mentioned Ricky Jackson, you can go ahead and look at my YouTube channel for a short video I did about Ricky after meeting him this year, and also interviewing a man named Calvin Buari, who also spent over 20 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. I mean, this is real, and I think that I never realized how many people have been wrongfully convicted because there was no DNA evidence available and they just relied on witness testimony. And yeah, there are cracks in the justice system. That's just the way it is. But I really am thankful that I am aware, and it really does help me look at cases through a different lens as well. But I think that, again, everybody should be aware of this stuff and the fact that it happens and how strong these men and women are. Truly, they are so strong. So I encourage everybody to watch the Sing Sing Chronicles and look into JJ and his story because it's just incredible. And Dan is incredible as well. But guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you like, don't forget to rate and subscribe on Apple or wherever you listen. And I will be back later this week with new episodes.